Hello, folks. This is Andrew Keller here from GoPro Wrestling, and sitting with me at this time, it's a great honor and privilege, none other than the franchise, Shane Douglas.
How you doing, buddy?
Thank you so much.
Thank you, man. It's good to be here.
One of the greatest ECW champions ever.
Thank you.
And,
Appreciate that.
We do appreciate you here with us. And I noticed, when we picked up from the airport, you're coming out from United. I just want to make sure that you're okay and all in one piece.
Yeah, my teeth are all still in one place. They didn't. Actually, our flight was only about half full, so we didn't have any problems. But boy, I wish it would. I told the guy sitting next to me, I said, "Boy, I wish somebody would come on here and punch me in the mouth." Be a nice little paycheck, I'm sure.
The current guys in NXT right now, the talent pool, like you were instrumental in like Bobby Roode's career and AJ Styles when they were coming up through TNA. What do you think of what they're doing now?
Well, I mean, I've said for years that Bobby Roode, Samoa Joe, AJ Styles, that whole class of guys that I've worked with as head of talent relations in TNA, I said back then, these guys are the future. I mean, they had Bobby Roode. The first time I saw him perform with Team Canada, he did something that most people probably didn't catch. But he was in the middle of beating somebody down, and he stopped and stood there for a second. He just did the slow glare to the audience. And I thought, man, he's got this. He's got the instincts. Because that you can't teach those. You can teach the moves. You can teach the high spots. You can even have, as Vince has done so well or so onerously over the last 15, 20 years, have people read off a teleprompter. You cannot teach a kid instincts. And Bobby Roode had those instincts in spades. To me, he's like the personification of what a heel should look like, wrestle like, act like. AJ, I mean, no pun intended, just absolutely phenomenal. You'd see the kid in the way he could move. The effortlessness of his moves in the ring were stunning to watch. Samoa Joe just impresses on every level. He's such a believable. You look in his face and you can see he believes it in his eyes. And again, that's something you can't teach. You either evoke that or you don't evoke that. What boggled my mind was with this incredibly talented dressing room that we had, the Bobby Roodes and the AJs and the Samoa Joes, plus the Petey Williamses and the Eric Youngs and my God, the list of guys that went on and on. That Dixie Carter couldn't or wouldn't make that work. As head of talent relations, for me, that was such a bummer because I really believed being on Spike, we had a much better outlet than USA. I mean, it's a guys' network. To me, professional wrestling is a guys' sport. We had an incredibly talented and largely unknown dressing room. The idea of bringing the next stars, if you bring in a Hulk Hogan or a Ric Flair, nothing against those guys, but you bring them in, they're already established stars. So they come in as being, look what we're giving to your company or what we're bringing to your company. TNA was in the enviable position at that point, 2005, 2006, of having these largely unknown America guys and incredible athletes that we were going to get to showcase and portray to the U.S. audience for the first time. And my God, did Dixie miss that by a country mile. She did nothing to elevate them. We can go on and talk about it.
Is that her fault or the people around her, do you think?
It's her fault. Snake dies from the head down. It's a leader leads, and when you have people, and let's face it, through the years, she had literally everyone there, from Terry Funk to Jeff Jarrett to me to
Dusty
Raven
Rhodes.
to Dusty Rhodes there was literally everybody in the business that come through there, and all that experience. In my experience with Dixie, and I'm sure it was the same for everybody else. In fact, I'd heard it was from Terry Funk and Raven told me that they encountered the same thing, as did Mick Foley, was that, she would ask them questions, they would give advice, and she'd never take it. And this became like an infuriating running joke. She would come in and say, Shane, Vince Russo wants to do this week. What do you think about that? And I'd run it through my head, and think about it for about 15, 20 minutes. I'd go back, well, if you do that, then you're going to have to go this direction, and explain why. Not that I would expect somebody from outside our industry to understand the psychology of our industry like somebody like us would, having been in it for 37 years. But so I would explain it to the minutia and explain why, if you do this, you have to go left because of this and this and this and this. And she wouldn't take that advice. And then 2.5 weeks later, she came back and said, you were right. The fans are bitching and moaning online. And even that, we had all told her, stay the hell off the blogs because you're going to get 25 or 30 people's opinion which is meaningless to the millions that you hope are watching. And
The
this,
Vince Russo effect.
yeah, and this went on for 5.5 years. So it became like during production meetings, Terry Taylor and I would sit back there and play tic-tac-toe because we knew there was really nothing to say. If you said something, they wouldn't take the advice
Were
anyway.
you there when they went head-to-head with
No, thank God, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed watching that because, again, with that talented dressing room, had they done the things that they were being told to do or directed to do or giving advice to do or advised to do, I have no doubt that with AJ's ability, with Rick Rude's abilities, with Samoa Joe's, that entire dressing room's abilities, plus the major names that they were bringing in, the Scott Halls and the Kevin Nashes and the Hulk Hogan's and later Flairs out. Had they done it properly, my God, they could have blown Vince's doors off. Vince McMahon did something that was so amazing when he first went big back in '84. The very second that Hulk Hogan stepped onto Johnny Carson's stage, wrestling was transformed forever because wrestling was no longer just wrestling. They were mainstream stars. Hulk Hogan was known outside of wrestling circles. And up to that point, I would say not many people outside of wrestling would have known who Bruno Sammartino was. Not because of anything that Bruno did or didn't do. He's, to me, the biggest star in wrestling history. And we can go to the numbers if you'd like. But the second he stepped on Johnny Carson's stage, professional wrestling became mainstream. And they became stars. Why did Dixie, and she had all the contacts, and certainly they were spending the money like drunken sailors. They had the resources, so why wouldn't she have done that? Because I have no doubt that look at the response that AJ Styles got coming out with no fanfare, with no build up, nothing, coming out to a basically a battle royal match. The lid blew off the place because it's AJ Styles in WWE. I think Vince is missing it by a country mile now. Why in the world was Samoa Joe and Bobby Roode be in NXT in the first place? These guys are better wrestlers than everybody else they have on their card right now. And that's not slamming anybody on their card. These guys are exceptional talents. So I think NXT has its hands on some great talent, and I'm just excited to see what those guys are going to bring to the table when they finally get to the WWE.
Would you work with the young talent in NXT if, say, WWE asked you to? I mean, you have a lot of experience with.
Yeah, well, they're not going to, but those guys. For those the guys we're talking about, I don't really think there's much that they have to be taught. They have the tools in their toolbox. The question now is, will somebody put them on the right platform and put the right spotlight on them and give them the right spot? To me, if I were running it, and it's full on deaf ears, but let those guys do their promos. Bobby Roode's incredible at it, and Samoa Joe is incredibly convincing at it. So why would you have them read a teleprompter? To me, if I go out and I trade and spend all this money to get a Ben Roethlisberger, I'm not going to set up a pocket-only offense because Ben's a great scrambler. It seems to me that Vince brings these guys in and tries to bend them and conform them to his system, as opposed to allowing these artists to bring their art and artistry to his stage.
Would you ever consider, if they were to invite you back?
No. When I left there in '96, what's the old saying, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. I went there with all the best intentions in my heart. I didn't want to leave ECW. I was happy as a pig in shit in ECW. And there was something that really delayed me. I took 6 trips up there before, and it was something that was just in the back of my brain, like I knew there was a screw job coming. And it just didn't feel right. And ECW was my home. Like I said, I was happy there. It was the one promotion that I wrestled for in 37 years that I actually looked forward to going to work to. The other places were a job, and not necessarily better or worse. It just was, okay, now you got to go earn your paycheck. ECW was like, man, I can't wait to get to this weekend because you knew the fans were going to be just electric. When I left there in '96, I told myself and I told the world and I told Vince, I'll never work for you again. And I'm a guy that sticks to my guns and my beliefs. My belief system today is the same as it was when I was a 19-year-old kid. The things that I believed in then, I believe in now. The things I didn't believe in then, I don't believe in now. And for me, having seen what happened when I went there in '96, I came in as the hottest heel in the industry in '96. And the first thing that Vince did in his infinite wisdom, the genius, was to tell Shane Douglas to not use any inflection in his promos. Again, Ben Roethlisberger, don't scramble. To me, if it wasn't a setup, if it wasn't collusion on their part to get me out of ECW, I was the mouthpiece for ECW, and I was slamming them at every corner and doing damage. To bring me in there and tell me not to speak except in a monotone voice, to use no passion in my promos, that was what I was known for. And then to put me in a baby powder blue, baby powder puff blue singlet when I had been wearing black and gold for the largest part of my career, and what the fans had known me around the world as the franchise character.
And you cut your hair as well.
Cut my hair, and I had offered Vince to sign those copyrights over. Thank God he didn't take me up on that, because God knows what legalities I would have faced trying to get the hell out of that bizarro world. But
Vince promised you, didn't he promise you and your wife that you were going to get a big payday? And
well, his exact words were, my wife, ex-wife now, who didn't know anything. She relied on me for the business. She didn't know much about the business side, but I wanted to use her as good cop, bad cop, going there to talk to Vince. And I told her on the way up, I said, if he asks you any questions, don't pull any punches. Tell him whatever you think. I don't care if you cuss him out. I don't care. You just tell him what you think. And he said to her, Shane tells me that you guys share all these decisions and you must have some concerns. And she said, I was proud of her, because that wasn't really Carla's way. Carla's not a very assertive person. She looked him in the eyes and she said, my husband makes a 6-figure income from ECW. He teaches school and is home 5 days a week and in bed with me 5 nights a week. What could you possibly offer him to walk away from all that? He leaned across. He doesn't have a desk. He has a big square table on his desk. And his seat is positioned higher than yours. Right. The old power thing. I'm more powerful than you because my chair is higher.
It's a mind game, right?
Yeah, it's a mind fuck. But grow up, Vince. And he leaned across and he patted her hand, and he said, Carla, you have my word, I'm going to make your husband a very wealthy man. Well, that's when I jumped in, because I knew that she wouldn't know how to follow up on that. And I'm sure that, all things being relative, I said to Vince, well, what are we talking about? Because I'm sure you and I have different definitions for the term wealthy. I guess in Vince's head, he thinks $85,000 a year is wealthy if it's being paid to a wrestler. If you ask him about his personal wealth, I'm sure he wouldn't like the $85,000.
Is that what you were making?
No, I just pulled that number out of thin air.
Oh, okay.
But he said to me that it's not uncommon. It was funny because he prefaced it. He never says I or we. He says we here in the World Wrestling Federation. He speaks about it like an alternate universe. And he said, we here in the World Wrestling Federation, it's not uncommon in the World Wrestling Federation for our lead heel to make a minimum of $350,000 to $550,000 on base salary. Well, I can tell you I made nowhere near that. After the 4th month on the road, I was on the road an average of 28 days a month. I started in the semi-main event with Razor. I called home one day from the road and was exhausted. We were running constantly. And my ex-wife, who swore rarely, first thing she said was, where the fuck's our money? And I had no idea what she was talking about. And she'd been, of course, at home getting the checks. And she said, well, they haven't been very good. I said, well, what's not very good? She said, hold on, I'll get them. And I heard her leafing through the office to the file drawer, and she comes back on a few seconds later, about a minute later, and she says, 1,400. I said, no, Carla, all of them together. She said, that is all of them together. My head about exploded on my fucking shoulders. I would have strangled that Irishman. And now, to be fair, as if I'm being overly
you guys
unkind.
were going overseas.
Oh, we were everywhere.
Yeah,
packed houses and getting great responses. And to be fair, I was taking a $200 draw at the beginning of each week and a $200 draw at the end of each week, just for incidentals. I usually came home with most of that cash in my pocket, but if I needed cash on hand. So if you add that up in the 4 months, that would be another $6,400. So in 4 months, I was paid $7,800 working as a superstar for the WWF in the semi-main event spot. And it was at that point that I knew I had to go talk to Vince and if he didn't correct in a big way, it was time to leave.